Is everyone good? Alright then. Greetings, everyone. I'm Samuel Johnson.
Who are you pointing to?
I'm pointing to you!
I'm Haley Dudley.
Timothy D. Hobley.
Nicole.
And welcome back to the Phantom Perspectives. And today we're going to be discussing episode 6 of Danny Phantom, What You Want. And how these things usually work, Nicole, is that when I have the guests on, I usually ask for their opinions first. So since Haley's been on here longer, what did you think of the episode?
I thought it was pretty good. You know, it was very... I definitely like the villain. Is probably one of my favorites, but, you know, that's just me.
Tim.
I enjoyed the episode. There was some parts that I kind of couldn't figure... That always I questioned about, but it's still a really good episode. It's in my top 5.
And Nicole.
Well, having not watched the series in many years, it was nice to see another episode. And as I watched it, kind of remembered what was going on. I liked how they pointed out some of the logic holes, and it was an interesting film style of cartoon that I don't think is super popular anymore, with pretty good opening scenes, as you mentioned, that, again, aren't very popular. Usually it's just theme song and then enter the show, so.
Yep. Alright then. So, everyone who watches knows how this works. Now I'm going to try and summarize the episode. I usually spoil it rotten. What goes on in this episode is that as Haley said, we get another new villain. This is a villain known as Desiree. She was, as the episode points out, she was once a harem girl whose master, I suppose, promised her everything. A kingdom, riches, gold, whatever. But unfortunately, her master's jealous wife didn't like what he was doing, so she threw her out, and she apparently died of a broken heart in old age. As such, in her afterlife, she now pretty much has the power to now grant anyone's desire, but there's always some twisted mess to it. Just some kind of dark twist that pretty much turns it back on you. And in this case, Danny and Tucker encounter her while they're at a swap meet, and she's knocked out of a bottle by a girl who wants cotton candy. And so, first thing she does is that she unleashes a whole swarm of cotton candy on the whole crowd.
Floods of cotton candy.
Yeah.
The cotton candy basically turned into water.
Yeah.
Or more like a sludge, to be honest. It reacted more like a sludge.
Yeah. So it pretty much just consumes the entire thing. Danny manages to at least fend her off, but not beat her. And pretty much through more of the episode, she begins doing other things like that. For example, Dash is up playing football. He sucks. He wishes he had the power to fight them off, so she turns him into a giant monster. Paulina wants to be as cute as this... What was it called? Senora Pussycat?
Sayonara Pussycat.
Yep.
Danny Phantom version of Hello Kitty.
Yeah, and just every bit as disturbing. She wishes she was just as cute as that, so she's turned into a little chibi girl, which actually makes her ego even bigger.
Yeah, it did remind me of Gur from Invader Zim, though.
Yeah.
As her ego grew, she got more powerful and larger.
Yep, pretty much. But then it all comes to what's the central focus of the episode. Like, pretty much every time Danny sees Desiree or she does something, he goes to take care of it, but usually in this case he leaves Tucker in the dust. Sam's not here because she's sick and is kind of bedridden for most of the episode. But at one point, when Danny ditches Tucker to go take care of Paulina, he pretty much gets so fed up that he says, "I wish I had ghost powers too." And something the episode establishes that you could be anywhere, doing anything at any time, and as long as you say, "I want to do this," Desiree will find you. So she does grant him she grants his wish and gives him ghost powers, and he typically does everything that you would expect him to do with ghost powers.
She has better hair than Superman.
Well, it kind of reminds me. I'm gonna interrupt. It kind of reminds me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and after they introduced vengeance demons, it was like you don't say wish. Any sentence that involves "I wish" is immediately a no, and so the entire cast kind of acknowledged that that's kind of something you don't do, because if you say that, then you have a chance of enacting some demon out there who's going to make them.
I've actually never fully saw the Buffy series. I've been wanting
I'm
to.
offended, but we must continue this.
We'll have to watch it.
Have you ever seen a TV genie that at least once hasn't granted a wish that blew up in somebody's face?
I want to say Genie from Aladdin, but
No.
That still blew up in his face.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, that's kind of the
Rest
thing.
in peace,
with
Robin
genies.
Williams.
Yeah, rest in peace. But you get my point.
Yeah.
But pretty much, yeah, that's exactly it. Tucker begins abusing the powers, and at one point, Desiree winds up causing a guy's car to fly because he wished he could fly his car right over traffic, and so Danny and Tucker go to take care of it. Only while Danny's concerned with making sure everything goes all right and no one gets hurt, Tucker just wants the glory, and he even and he even accuses Danny of trying to steal that from him. While Danny points out, no, that's not it. And eventually, their fighting causes the car to crash into a silo.
Chicken ends up on a guy's head.
Yeah, the guy thinks. I think the guy was high. You pointed it out. He probably thinks he's on a trip.
Yeah.
But pretty much,
I'm pretty sure he was just thankful that there was something that was mildly understandable happening.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, there's a chicken on my head.
yeah. But pretty much, when that happens, it turns out that Tucker is just getting even more fed up, and the more fed up he gets, the more powerful he seems to get. He flies faster than Danny. And that's something I forgot to mention. Danny actually gets a new ghost power in this episode. As he fights Desiree, he learns that he can shoot blasts of ectoplasm out of his hands, which is something that he never got out which he never learned in the first 5 episodes. Something that Tucker does with that, he learns it almost immediately.
Yeah.
And he just keeps getting stronger and stronger, and to the point where it's actually worrying Danny. He becomes even more callous with his powers, using them more fragrantly, playing more pranks. At one point, he even catches him changing his grade.
Yeah.
And the more Danny tries calling him out on it, the angrier he gets. At one point,
Mostly, his powers are jealousy based.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens, because Danny eventually does learn Desiree's backstory, and does manage to draw her out, or at least another guy draws her out, and he happened to be there.
Wishing well guy for $1 million.
Yep.
Yeah. And then just money's not everything, which is to be honest, really is true, but it also is a lot of things in life.
Yeah, but he only said that because he saw
Holy shit.
And got scared.
Yeah. And so he begins. So he says, "I want you to change Tucker back." And says, "Oh, I can. By noon, he's going to be stuck like this forever." And his jealous. Noon tomorrow.
He's the most powerful
ghost boy
in the world.
Exactly. And so pretty much she and Danny get into a fight, but Danny manages to finally beat her by pretty much inciting her rule by saying, "I wish you would disappear," and he pulls out the Fenton thermos and she's sucked in. And so Danny tries tracking down Tucker, and when he catches him, and this is when he catches him changing his grade, he tries calling him out on it, but Tucker doesn't take that well, and then we start to see that what she was actually going for, as he actually starts changing into a monster. His skin turns green, his eyes, his ears and teeth turn pointy.
He turns into a golem. Not a golem, a goblin a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much. And at this point, he just wants Danny dead. So they get into a fight, and as the fighting goes on, he just becomes even more monstrous, much bigger, stronger, and he's becoming even more determined to pretty much gut Danny. And Danny's just worried, what can I do for him? Because every time he tries to tell him to try to talk him down, Tucker is not listening. He refuses to listen to him. So he thinks, I have an idea, and this is kind of where I did skip something over. Because Danny returned one of the Desiree spirits, let's call them, to the ghost zone, but when he went through there, he wound up accidentally flying through what looks like a giant dream catcher in the Fenton lab. It turns out it's called the Fenton dream catcher, or
his mom and dad made it because they got the flu as well, and they're trying to
expel
the ghost that is making them sick, and so they built a sweat lodge and they built this dream catcher, and they're hoping that it'll pull whatever ghost is making them sick out of them.
No proof that it's actually a ghost, though.
I love how even Danny says, you could just have a common flu, no ghost at all, and Jack's like, I remember when I was young and naive.
True.
But pretty much it's later renamed the Fenton Ecto Expunger. But that's exactly what it does. It's exactly what they say it does. It pretty much takes anything ghostly and takes the ghost out of it. So if you had say your remote was possessed, you threw the remote. If you threw the remote through the ghost catcher, the remote would fly out the other side. But whatever was possessing would wind up getting thrown out.
Yeah.
But they'd be separate.
Yeah.
So okay, real quick. So you know how when Danny went through the dream catcher,
yeah,
and his ghost separated from his body.
Yeah.
But when Tucker did, the ghost was evil. So does that basically mean that Danny's ghost form, and when he went through it, since he had the body form and the ghost form, did that split his personality into two?
That's explored in a later episode, actually, which is actually one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
See, I would have to say that the reason, at least why they look different and everything, is because Danny was Tucker is possessed by a ghost, and Danny was split into becoming a ghost.
Yeah, sure. But as everyone said, that's what Danny does. He goads Tucker into following him all the way to the Fenton Labs, gets the fight down there, and then just before noon hits, Danny's able to blast him right through the ghost catcher and splits Tucker from his ghost half.
Yeah.
And after that, he manages to suck Tucker's ghost half into the Fenton thermos. Tucker pretty much apologizes for all the shitty things he's been doing, and the episode ends with Tucker and Danny having caught Sam's cold, and now Sam's caring for them.
And a really bad pun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Also for the
They
fact
also-
that they were fighting inside of a girl.
Yep, that's
Oh,
what
yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna mention.
they possessed Paulina at one point. Tucker wanted to use it to
They
dissuade.
double teamed her body. Oh God.
Oh God!
Yep. No.
Why?
Not sexual, just the words they used were
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Like they had to know what they were talking about. They had to know what they were talking about.
It's Nickelodeon.
But-
they do this
But
thing.
they gotta
Yeah.
hide adult jokes in there for the parents watching.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly.
Just like Disney.
Mommy, why was that so funny?
Picture. So yeah, as everyone said, I did enjoy the episode. I'm a big nut for these wish gone wrong type of stories where things just kind of get turned on their head. And Desiree is a good manifestation of that. Like she's pretty much just everything. Like that's her whole purpose. Give you what you want, but always in a way that screws you over.
But see, that's one of the things I liked about Desiree that you don't usually see with any genie style ghosts is that it doesn't start out, with the exception of Tucker. The wishes don't start out as, "Hey, this is a great, awesome thing." It's immediately, "Oh crap! Why did I ask for this?"
Basically. It's
Which-
basically as if it's. I was gonna refer something as to Pandora's box, but not really. Well, not. No, it doesn't work out. Scratch that.
No.
Well, I guess
Dot,
you.
dot, dot.
Okay. Anyway, well, that's pretty much just what it is. Every wish that is made, as we've said, does somehow screw Tucker over, and if it doesn't look like it does, it definitely had the seeds are definitely planted. Like the little girl. The first goes like the kid got her cotton candy, but it wound up swarming the entire swap meet.
It was
She was
not-
happy
The
though.
entire carnival.
Like,
She was
she-
suffocated.
She
She got
Boom!
She died in pleasure and bliss.
I
Oh.
mean,
I think
she
ate
died
her
in
way to the
sugar and,
circus.
and
I can just imagine her just clawing her way out.
Nom,
Circus,
nom.
mommy!
And she'd just be eating her way out.
Oh my
Hey,
gosh.
where'd everybody
Oh my
go?
goodness, it was a sunny day. It would have melted.
Oh, no!
Sticky everything.
Oh
Oh,
no!
poor child. She was.
She had long curly hair.
Oh my gosh.
Let's not think about it. Let's not think about it. We're not.
Next wish.
Here,
Next
wash
wish.
it
Oh. But
Oh,
you-
the
Okay,
dentist goes
actually-
nuts.
Oh yeah, that was funny. That was
No.
just, that was just like a short gag, because everything's being swarmed. The only guy that's actually looking happy is the guy who had a dentist stand.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, Tucker was the only everything that went wrong with everything was going on with Tucker too, and it was kind of immediately a bad idea for his wish to be granted. But
yeah,
Tucker
he
survived
didn't.
that.
No,
Cotton
but
candy.
he didn't notice. No, I'm talking about his wish.
Oh,
His
yeah.
wish.
when he wished he had ghost powers.
When he wished he had ghost powers, it was immediately bad. But he didn't seem to really notice it because it was more of like, oh my gosh, I'm exactly
Actually-
like Danny. It's like,
True.
which I thought I'm just kind of realizing now as I'm looking back and hey, that's kind of interesting.
Actually, that kind of brings up something that is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
It could be the idea that maybe that everything did what was going wrong with him, but Tucker is just so naturally like that. Because that's a good.
Mhm.
Because he is like that. Like in the episode that I like want to. Oh yeah, Splitting Images. Last week when I watched Splitting Images, when Danny was actually starting to abuse his powers and use them to be kind of a bully, when Sam kept telling him, "Don't do that. It's not a good idea to abuse your powers." Tucker kept telling him, "Don't listen to her. Do that. Get our sweet revenge." So
They
the
mentioned that too.
yeah, but that's exactly what happened, and that's exactly what. So maybe the idea was it already started because he was getting more. Because even from the first thing, he was angry at Danny.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like he was jealous, but never like that jealous. Like he wasn't so angry that he would actually try to harm Danny.
He became a Raven Pinata.
Well, he
But
was-
see, that's kind of the thing. That's what I'm talking about though too. Is that like everyone else could kind of like Danny could definitely see there was something wrong with Tucker because his immediately reaction was like, I gotta find this
Yeah.
ghost.
Yeah.
Because he could immediately tell there is something wrong with his best friend. But Tucker, it doesn't seem like he noticed that at all. He didn't notice any drawbacks. It was just awesome that he had all this power now, which
Yeah.
I thought was,
And by the time he did notice the drawbacks, it was already too late.
well, he
Also-
didn't notice until they were separated.
Yeah.
I also kind of.
Oh,
Go
no, you
ahead.
go first.
Well, I like the fact that when Danny was flying after the car, Tucker flown by, and it took Danny a couple seconds to finally realize
Actually,
that's not right.
I actually kind of find that a little funny because he's used to seeing Tucker, so I'm gonna kind of let that slide because he's used to seeing Tucker helping him out. So to see Tucker there, like just for a second, there's like, oh, Tucker's got my back, but then but then it registered. Like it's like, oh, Tucker's got wait, how was he flying?
Yeah.
Well, see, it's those little things that I really like about this show because they add a little extra personality to the characters. Like,
They did.
you know,
Yeah, just like a little thing.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I kind of disagree with the idea the more I think about it that their wishes instantly went wrong, because the girl with the cotton candy started out super excited, and then the girl who wished to be cute was loving it. She hadn't noticed yet either, and
Mhm.
Tucker, he was loving it for a while too. We never got to see the girl's reaction after everything was bombarded with
Well,
cotton candy, but
I wouldn't say that the other people, like the people who got their wish, I wouldn't say necessarily that they noticed, but like it was immediately
surrounding
clear.
area.
It was
Yeah.
immediately clear
Yeah.
that like there was something going on there, and
Yeah.
it wasn't immediately clear with Tucker that something bad was going to happen.
Because he was
Except
so close
for,
to that.
okay,
know.
this doesn't seem right.
Well,
that's kind of what I'm saying though. Is
Yeah.
like earlier we were talking about how it immediately went wrong, and now that I'm thinking about it, it
Well,
might have actually been something that evolved like Tucker's jealousy. They got more and more consumed by whatever the wish was.
Well,
I
that-
would
I-
argue. I would argue. Sorry,
I have a counter argument to that. For a little girl, if you were a little kid and you suddenly were bombarded with all that candy, or at all, would you suddenly think, "Oh my God, I'm gonna get swarmed by candy"? Would you actually think that?
No,
No.
I'll have my mouth wide open.
And then for the other people, and then for the other people like Paulina, Dash, or even Tucker, they were technically possessed by what they were. The only one that I think is the closest to actually somewhat getting into what they were was Dash, and that's only because his ghost self actually did start playing football, and then when it was taken away from him, he was because before the ghost got taken out of him, he said he kept doing all of the football things where Danny took it out, and then he said hike.
Yeah.
Like, that was the only one, so I would kind of argue against that a
To
little.
go on how you were saying, like, okay, so like how Dash, when he was possessed and everything, how the possession basically ripped his clothing and went back to, and when he came back to normal, his clothing was still ripped. When Tucker was possessed, because technically we are saying he was possessed,
Mhm.
even though it was a ghostly power that ended up possessing him, it still destroyed his clothes. But when he went through the ghost catcher, his clothes were fully back to normal.
I wonder if
I have
that's
to remind
because
myself
he was
not to
getting
interrupt
so much more powerful.
But see, I actually think what it is that
Oh, sorry.
with
No, you're
Dash, it was a physical change to his physical body that everyone else could see, and with Tucker, it was more of he was a ghost boy. He was a happy. He was the same as Danny. So he would have, like, it's the same thing with Danny where his ghost suit is different than his everyday clothes. So I would say that kind of accounts for it, but I don't know.
Question mark?
I'm kind of with both of you guys. Like, I'm a little bit of both because on the one hand, you could easily say that monster form he turned into was his ghost form. However, it wasn't like with Danny. Like with Danny and other Halfas we see later on, they can shift between their ghost form and their
Well,
human
see,
form.
you
I'm not
could
done.
tell. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm not done yet.
I'm trying really hard. It's hard.
Anyway, like I said, for Danny and other Halfas we see later on,
Just gave him away.
spoilers, there are other Halfas later on. But for them, their ghost states and their human states they can easily shift between them. Regardless of how different their ghost states are, they can easily shift right into their human form. But for Tucker, you never see him actually do that. In fact, when he actually does shift into his ghost form, it's not like the rings pop up and then his form changes and they spread over his body. No, it actually physically changes. But if it was his ghost form, you could make the argument that it did, but we never actually see him transform.
Well,
so
see, we don't see him transform in the same way that Danny does, because Danny has the two visible rings that part. But Tucker, on the other hand, he develops that green glow around him. And while it just pops up and it doesn't have, like, a visible, here's the transition point, it is a separation from human Tucker and ghost Tucker.
Okay. Well, okay, so we got one guy who thinks it's a possession, middle, what do you think? Sorry, you've just been sitting there on your phone. You gotta have an opinion.
Well, it's difficult because dealing with ghosts in a comic realm, there's always going to be logical fallacies and things that the creators might not have actually put the time in to explain or develop as fully as it could have. But I think football was definitely a physical change that affected his physical form, as Haley said, and it wasn't as much of a original ghost. It wasn't ghost specific, is what I'm saying. And there was very obviously a aggressive spirit pulled out of him that wasn't necessarily like him. And when Tucker transformed, it was more separate from his self, and the ghost was it seemed like the ghost was feeding off of and developing and
From his
growing
emotions.
out of his emotions like a seed,
I
and
can
it
translate
eventually
what
took
you're saying.
over like a mother log in the
Let her
forest.
finish.
So I think that the physical form change was a possession in a more true sense, and Tucker's transformation was more, I want to say, possibly poltergeist.
Well, see, that's kind of
but
the definition that
Yeah.
it
I've
wasn't
seen.
as much of its own entity. Usually, when you have a poltergeist, it's
Well, yeah,
something-
they separate it.
Actually, that kind of makes sense.
Sorry.
It's the idea of its own
it
entity.
grew more from
Yeah.
his
Yeah, yeah,
spirit than something else.
Well, yes,
yeah.
but that-
Poltergeists a lot
but
of times
that's
are formed from something else.
Like,
Well, see,
I'm
that's
sorry
kind
to interrupt you again. Sorry.
That's kind of what that's kind of why I'm comparing the like possession to poltergeist, because poltergeist develops from a person as like another aspect to the person, is like that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, I'm
Except
a little dorky with that stuff, but
except for in this case, Desiree intentionally she started with the ghost powers, but she made the driving force his jealousy and anger. Like that was how they screwed over. Like she sensed the jealousy, and she used that as the driving force
Yeah.
for his powers.
Gave him kind of a seed.
Yeah, pretty much. Like that's how she screwed him over. She used the jealousy, and the more he used his powers, the more he felt. That way, the more they kind of just encouraged each other to the point where they became this thing.
Because for me, how I think it's like it was more of a physical change for Tucker's because when Danny was originally got his powers, you could see in the intro about how it looked painful to him from in the machine. It changed his DNA, his molecules, and everything.
But
Tucker was more. That's how I say Tucker was more in possession, because it didn't really change his molecules. Sure, it changed. It gave him powers and everything.
see, I wouldn't argue that.
Also,
I'm not,
but also when they were split, the ghost that came out of Tucker was more angry. When Danny and his ghost split, you didn't see that it was angry.
Well, see, I'm not arguing that Tucker was not possessed, because I'm pretty sure that's kind of obvious,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
But I would argue that it's not the same as like with Dash or with any of the other characters, because it's like she gave him the same. She took the ghost powers and gave them to him, and then they created a separate entity more than. Because it grew from his jealousy, his hatred, his anger, his all
I
that
think
fun
a good
stuff.
analogy would be the Mask. Actually, like.
That would be a good analogy.
Like, I remember one episode of the Mask cartoon series. It was called Split Personality. In the episode, the mask got broken in two, but it could still transform you. Stanley wore one half, and then his childhood bully, Chet Bozak, wore the other half. When Chet put it on, his mask persona was more darker and twisted, but in the beginning, they seemed to be more in sync. When Chet did something, his mask persona did it too. When his mask persona did it, Chet did it too, but it wasn't until Chet tried slicing Stanley in two that they finally had the split. Whereas with Stanley, every time, no matter when, the entire time he was wearing his half of the mask, he and his mask persona were not in sync at all, because he'd been wearing it so often that they were pretty much two separate entities. Like, the longer he used the power, the more different they became.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be a good analogy.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying, and so that's why I would argue though that it's kind of like he's kind of on the same lines as Danny as far as like with the ghost power and everything, and that explains why it looks different, because it's not really the same sort of ghost power that Danny has, where it is literally he is split. It is something that was added to him as a little extra thing that developed into this other creature that kind of looks like a drooling, idiotic.
Yeah.
One
kinda-
thing that I've been waiting to bring back up is I think one of the reasons it was less painful for Tucker
Tucker.
Yeah, Tucker.
was because his powers weren't right away changing his DNA. It was an added power to his existing system that took over more slowly, so I think it wouldn't have necessarily have
Like
caused
a
as
virus.
much- Well, I was thinking more like growing pains
Okay.
I would-
versus steroids or something.
I would argue that it didn't hurt at all because one, you didn't see him in any sort of pain, but I would say that it's more because it was a wish rather than a science experiment accident that
Went wrong.
happened, and
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah, like yeah.
It was a wish that someone that Desiree granted, and so it was just something that she made into reality. So you could actually argue that his powers weren't his own, but a creation of Desiree herself.
That would kind of make sense because everyone else that got ghost powers actually could shift between two different forms. They could use their powers freely in each form, but for Tucker, he didn't have another form. He just had he just became a ghost,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Also, I like how it was after he got his
Tuca's
powers.
coming.
After the entire time after he got his powers. Hello, Tuca. He didn't even go. The first time you see him going into the girls' locker room is when he's fighting Danny at the end.
Oh yeah.
You would think that would be the first place you would go to.
Yeah, considering Tucker, I had wondered that myself. Like, why did he go? Like, I know it's not technically
He
the.
may not have fully hit puberty yet. He was more concerned with like younger children hijinks.
But in the previous episodes, he's really checking out girls.
Exactly.
I-
He had,
So
apparently,
it's like-
apparently
See-
he hadn't been caught.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Maybe that's why he avoided it. He thought maybe someone would see him.
Well, I mean, he kind of stepped it up from there, though, and actually took possession of a girl
True.
rather than the girls'
Yeah.
locker room. I mean,
3 in
why
1.
would you hide in a locker when you could actually hide in the body?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
that just
disturbing.
that reminds me of a.
Danny used the bra as a weapon.
That's still disturbing.
Okay, that reminds me of the at the end of Little Dicky's song, like the Freaky Friday song, where he's like, it's like his mentality switches into Kaylee Jenner body, and he says, "I'm going to explore this," and it's like, what the heck? Little Dicky's a
Oh.
rapper, a Jewish white rapper who's actually pretty funny.
Okay.
I'll have to show you the song.
No, you don't.
I don't know who to listen to now.
Trust me.
Mm.
I'm just gonna be sitting here. Nothing.
Back to the show.
Yeah,
think
pretty much.
I think that we've, like, unless anyone has anything to add.
Well, I do have something to add. It's a minor thing, but it actually is something that helps to an adding series. Danny learning new powers.
Ah, yes.
It's a minor thing, even in the context of the episode, but it is something that they do call attention to. The fact that Danny is learning his powers. Like when Danny first confronts Desiree, Desiree tries to look into his being, so to speak, to see what he wants, and he pretty much does the bad touch thing, and suddenly his hand glows, and he blasts her with
He didn't utilize it that much in the episode, though.
That's true. That's exactly why they don't call attention to it.
Yeah.
But he does use it because he does use it later on. But I like that. Like he said, is this a new ghost power? And that opens up the idea that he's still growing.
Yep.
Like
But-
even with these.
Tries to half-fight Tucker, blasts him in the cotton candy.
But
Yeah.
they also kind of address why he didn't use it the rest of the time because he doesn't really have that great of control of it, as
But
was
that's
shown
exactly-
after he fought Desiree the first time, and Tucker's like, "Hey, high fives him, and blasts him backwards into the cotton candy."
Yeah, but that's exactly it. That's how he acted when he first got his powers. When he got them, he kept phasing through walls. His pants kept falling down. He kept going through everything. And if he did discover a new power, it was by complete accident. Like
Yeah.
when he was able to separate parts of his body. I like this sort of thing though because it is consistent. He gets a new power, and of course he doesn't use it all the time because he doesn't know how to handle it. But the idea that he still can get more power and he can eventually learn to master it. That is something that I genuinely like.
Yeah.
One thing I really think in the series, they should have like a few episodes where it's just like him just straight training, trying to get better at his powers, you know?
They do have a couple episodes like that, especially in the episode that I alluded to earlier with Danny being split.
I mean,
Yeah.
I personal opinion though, that doesn't really like him just actively as it sits right now, unless there's a story change. Him just sitting down and training doesn't really seem like Danny because it's more of like he does what he does because there's no one else who can do it.
True.
But he's not actively trying to be a superhero or
Well,
anything.
almost.
It's just an.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just a like it's.
You interrupted
It's
a
something
Polish
that
woman.
happens.
That is wrong.
You're Polish?
You didn't know this?
I did not know that. I've known you for 22 years, and I never even know you're Polish.
Yeah.
I'm half Dutch, so
Huh.
much more chill.
I'm black and Italian.
Black is not a country of origin for your
African
family.
American and Italian.
I'm a bit Norwegian, Swedish, and German.
I also have
Norwegian,
Scottish,
Dutch, and German.
Polish, a lot of European from my father's side. Found out, like, a lot.
What was your point again?
Something
Something about the
Not
powers.
sure. I'm just thinking we're all
Almost
a
like-
happy world over here.
But you said something about. You said he didn't have anything to learn about.
Oh right, no, like I that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think that he has no. Just let him be for now. Otherwise,
He's gonna
climb
take
all
over this
over us.
thing. He's already taken over Ev already.
he gets this corner. This is all he gets. I would argue that because he doesn't actively seek out to be a better hero or to be a bigger hero at least, that it's not really. It wouldn't make sense for him to go off training, like to go off actively training for a series of episodes. I mean, I can see it like he practices every once in a while, but I don't see it being a key point because unless something in the storyline changes,
Yeah.
currently he's a teenager who
Yeah.
happens to have ghost powers.
These storylines usually are more, or rather, these shows are usually more story based and interaction based, and training is usually a singular thing unless it's like a training camp. And
Or
I
he
don't-
has to for some other
Yeah.
reason.
usually it's to train for somebody who beats him, and it's a major like multi-episode thing where they discover a bad guy or evolving into super bad guy, and he has to evolve with that in order to defeat the specific thing.
One thing I really would like, and this is not really based on the episode, but if they brought back the series. Brought back the animation, but brought
you
it
said
back
this last
as
time.
if he was an adult.
You said this last
Or
time.
bring it as his kids. Because
I
since
don't-
his DNA was altered, would his kids possibly have
No,
the ghost powers
But it's
also?
not his DNA that was all altered. As
It did
said.
say his DNA.
No, he said there was a great big flash and things just changed. His molecules got
That's
all
DNA.
rearranged.
We
Yeah,
saw the
but
ghost
it's
merging with his
different.
DNA.
It's different.
But we saw
It's
the ghost merging with his DNA.
Would his
No.
kids have the same powers? Or would they be like a smaller
That
percentage?
is
Debate,
is-
not rant based on opinion.
that,
Yeah.
but like
Actually, that would be interesting. Would one kid be human, one kid be ghost, and
oh
one
my
kid
God,
and
the
one
sibling
kid no?
rivalry.
We'd have
The
to
sibling
discover whether it
rivalry.
was a dominant or recessive gene.
We'd have to discover if it was a gene.
True.
I mean, can it be
Hold on a
passed on?
second.
Is it
Would
just
it
a
be-
mutation?
Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Her mother came by to let the dog out. Anyway, genetics about the whole thing.
We'd have to actually decide whether, in order to tell whether or not it's actually like if Danny had kids and that would they be ghosts or half or whatever, then you have to actually figure out whether or not it's a gene, whether or not it's just a mutation that only happened to Danny because he was exposed to unknown radiation, which
That
seems
might be-
probable.
That actually kind of seems the case, because, minor spoiler, I'm not going to reveal the entire detail, but there was one of the characters you meet later on does gain powers from being exposed to the energy instead of being caught in the middle of everything. So maybe that's how it works.
But then you also have to address. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Sure.
You also have to address then if you decide that it's a radiation or an energy thing. Then, like for example, if you want to get really scientific with it, then there are people like in today's society who are still dealing with radiation fallout as far as like birth defects. Blue eyes is a mutation, by the way. Stuff like that. Those little things are also. So you have to figure out, would it also be passed on, or is it just solely based on his genetic code, and can that modified genetics be passed on? Would he be able to reproduce at all?
True. Is he sterile or not?
I have no idea, and I don't
We have
think
not been told.
and the show never answers. Later,
Well,
A kid's show,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
good.
a
although
kid's show
there's
doesn't
one
answer
brief
whether
thing,
or
but I
not
don't think he's willing to have
sterile.
kids in that thing.
So another thing with like how it's mutation and everything, and how you say molecules, not DNA, but it had physical traits when he's in his ghost form. His eyes, his hair, both are different.
But
that
that's a
happens almost
separation.
all
That is a full
possession.
transformation.
Almost all possession changes eye color.
But what about the times when he's using his ghost powers and he's not in his ghost form?
His eyes do
Well, that-
actually change green during that somewhat. Like when
Yeah.
like when he possesses people, he doesn't have to be in his ghost state to possess people. but he can, but their eyes will turn green.
Yeah. So that isn't that more of a genetic
Okay, I'm
or
going to-
DNA style
I
mutation?
would disagree.
Because since it's in his
No.
DNA, doesn't that also mean it'll become genetic since it is a part of his DNA?
But see, that's the part-
Ghost sperm.
But no, that's your.
You'll never
I'm
see it
sorry.
coming.
Like it's not even there.
That's what she said.
Oh!
Oh.
Ah.
Giggity.
I think that we've gone far enough off topic.
Yeah.
Children's show.
That's
Yeah.
a whole other kind of white stuff.
Oh. So yeah,
Or would it be green?
Oh,
Would-
no,
would you-
a new type of ectoplasm.
we're not talking about this anymore. We're not talking about this anymore.
Bump.
Okay.
So on the whole,
That's
Now-
a whole nother thing
Good
that goes
episode.
bump in the night.
It was a good episode.
yeah, that's what. Yeah, exactly. It was a good episode. We liked the villain. We liked the kind of implications. I did like how it expanded on certain things, and the whole other people having ghost powers is expanded on in later episodes. If anything, you could probably say that this is like a preview for that. So on the whole, good villain, good situation, good setup. Overall, good episode.
If I remember correctly, that new power that he gains also does help him in the next one too.
I think. I don't know. I have to look it up again. I'm going by
I'm not
Wikipedia.
sure how long how many episodes it takes for him to actually use that one, but if I remember correctly, the next villain that appears is a bigger baddie, and he does end up needing that power.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it again. I'm gonna have to look it up because I'm going by the Wikipedia order. I don't fully trust the DVD order, but I'm gonna look it up, and I think that might be the case. So
With pretty much any series, the villains get more powerful as the time goes on, and the main character gets
Yeah.
stronger as time
Are we
goes
to
on.
argue with that?
I'm saying generally,
Because there's.
but may I finish?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see not necessarily a new character come in with powers later in the series, but maybe a different city, different timeline, different region. Would we still observe the monsters coming out of that gate being more powerful?
that actually would be interesting because they actually do show in the Ghost Zone that things are a lot more powerful. That the portal kind of is relative to it. But that's in a later episode.
Yeah, the
But
ghost
see-
powers are more powerful in the ghost realm than they are in the human realm.
Kind of.
But see,
but
here's the thing that.
Field advantage?
Here's
I think somewhat.
Here's
I don't
the
know.
thing about with the whole
know.
like the villains get more powerful as they go on. I feel like it's pretty random with Danny with this whole series because it's like,
They always sprinkle in weaklings here and there.
well, yeah, I mean,
Go
but like,
back, school.
yeah, exactly. Like they started out with like back to the first episode. They started out with a pretty kick-ass villain. I mean, she
Ooh,
like the,
someone
You mean the
changed
lunch lady?
like the lunch lady. Like she seems she's pretty
There's
kick-ass.
a fly.
But then the
honestly.
next villain was a dragon. The next
Yeah.
villain was a dragon. That's kind of a big step up.
Yeah, but then you
Lunch
know
lady,
the
two
but then you're
dragon.
dealing with like now you're dealing with Desiree, which is Jeannie, which she's a really
She was
cool
a
villain.
concubine.
She was a really cool villain.
Why
Like
do you
I
need to say she's a concubine?
Because that's basically the trait of how they dressed her as in the backstory.
She was a concubine,
no,
but
she
now
was
she's a
part
vengeful
of-
spirit.
She was
Yeah.
a harem girl. There is a
Yeah.
difference between a
Mhm.
concubine and a harem girl.
Sure.
That's a different story.
I never
Like,
knew the
Anywho.
difference.
I'll explain later.
Anywho, so like you have Desiree who is like she's not like, I'm gonna kick your ass, but she's definitely nothing to sneeze at. So I would argue that they mix it up enough that you don't
It's not as bad
expect
as Dragon Ball Z.
no, and you don't expect their next villain to be like,
To kick you in the nuts.
to be the next powerful villain and then the next powerful villain. It's random. It's more like
It's just kind of setting
they
up the
shake
variety.
things up.
It's kind of how that is with all superhero things, comic books or TV shows.
No.
I'm not done yet. Let me finish. When superheroes start out, they need to set up a status quo, which means they need a gallery of rogues. And the gallery of rogues does kind of change and differ depending on them. Some are stronger than others, some are smarter than others.
Mhm.
Even if they're weaker, if they're smarter, they can use that weakness to their advantage. Or for others, they have power that they can lord over people. When you have a superhero in any way, shape, or form, you gotta set up the.
Yeah,
the rogues.
no, I totally understand that, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but later on in the series, it still sticks to that. Like,
So there's already been so many spoilers.
Yeah, well, we haven't gotten
But-
into very big specifics.
But see, I'm
See,
like, but see, as you move on in the series, they kind
Turns
of
out they're all in
stick
space.
to that. It's they have it, so it's not just there's the big bad
There's
every
wizardry.
single day. It's there's this day's villain or ghost that escaped from the portal, and then there's the next day's ghost that escaped from the portal. It's not they're not by any means like going to destroy the world, but they're
They're there to stir things up.
but
Yeah.
only one of them has so far escaped from the portal, and that was the lunch lady.
No,
wasn't it?
Ghost Lady. No, the Lunch Lady was the first. Then there was the dragon,
Mhm.
and then after that there was Skulker.
Oh,
Mhm.
I forgot about him.
I forgot who was in episode 4. Who was in episode 4? Oh yeah, Technus. I love Technus. And
But-
in fact, so far the only ghosts that have not come out of the portal
Yeah, it's
were
Desiree.
Cindy Poindexter and Desiree.
See, I appreciate also how they kind of have a variety of like, hey, they do come out of the portal a lot because you can't control when that thing opens, but there are other ways that there are ghosts
Yeah.
into the world. I appreciate that.
Like,
Yeah.
is there random rips in the ghost universe to where it opens randomly for the human universe for them to get in there, or is it like, or are there people around in the Danny Phantom universe who are using the Ouija board?
I look at it as more as like, for example, this like Desiree was trapped in a lamp. Obviously, someone along the line realized, hey, she's not a good thing, and put her
That was
into
after
the
she died,
bottle,
yeah.
and she was stuck there.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's
Wait, since Danny has a ghost form, can he actually die?
I have no idea. In fact, there's some theories that say he's already half dead, so I have no idea. So I think we've gone on long enough for this. We've gone off on a tangent here, but bottom
A few
line,
of 'em.
well, quite a few. But bottom line, we like the episode. We like the villain. We like the implications. I like seeing Danny grow. And on the whole, I also like kind of that also focuses on a character. But on the whole, yeah, we all liked the episode. So that's pretty much it. I'm Samuel Johnson,
I'm Haley Dudley.
Timothy D. Hobley.
Nicole.
and I'll see you next week. And before we go,
So I'd like to say that I have a YouTube channel. It's called Wolfborn Gaming. Link will be in the description below. I just want to say first off, there's old content on there. I'm trying to rebirth the channel again. I have to wait till my buddy gives me back my laptop because he is currently using my laptop for coding. So that's going to be probably about maybe a week to maybe 2 or 3 more weeks later. But as soon as I get it back, there will be more content on there. I also do streaming on Twitch by the name of Mathetix95. There'll be a link in the description at my channel and everything, but I'll put a link to the description to my link in the description to my channel on this video. So,
that's pretty much it. I'll see you next week. Take care.
peace.